A group of more than a dozen Oregon lawmakers, addiction specialists, and law enforcement personnel spent last week in Portugal. Portugal decriminalized drugs 20 years ago, and their experience helped shape Oregon's Measure 110. Portugal has a centralized drug agency with an army of health workers dedicated to the problem. It also has designated indoor areas to use drugs, which critics say has led to more overdoses and crime. Oregonians can see that Oregon's version, Measure 110, is not working. Open fentanyl use is visible in communities across the state, especially in Portland. So what are we doing wrong? And what can we learn from the successes and failures in Portugal? KOIN 6 reporter Brandon Thompson caught up with several of those who made the trip. Republican State Representative Lily Morgan of Grants Pass was one of the biggest critics of Measure 110.
I would say the biggest takeaway is Portugal is not dealing with the same things we are in Oregon. They have been dealing with what had been a heroin crisis, and they decriminalized to deal with the heroin epidemic they were dealing with. But to date, they have not dealt with fentanyl at all. And so we are dealing with a more acute crisis of people's use and what we're seeing on the streets in Oregon, and need to come up with a solution that deals with immediate access to treatment and immediate help, kind of like a trauma system, right? You respond to address the trauma, you get the patient stabilized, and then you can look at the other things of what the long-term care and recovery looks like. We're not doing that in Oregon right now, and we need to come up with an immediate solution.
And where do you see the state legislature's role in supporting those solutions?
I believe voters voted for people to have access to treatment, and that's not what they saw. We did not increase capacity. We should be dealing with the access to detox, access to residential beds. And I believe that when voters voted for treatment access, the intent was that people not stay on drugs. What I saw in Portugal was long-term use and a systemic belief that drug use is okay. What we're seeing in Oregon is people not living lives. They are somebody else, almost like a zombie, living on the streets and not participating in life. If that individual were able to get off of these drugs and have a life and take part in society, we'd see different outcomes. We'd see something different and better than what I saw in Portugal.
And do you think because of our crisis with fentanyl and methamphetamine combined with that, do you think how Portugal operates is a model that fits for Oregon?
No, I do not believe it is a model that fits for Oregon.
However, others say Portugal does hold lessons for Oregon, primarily by making more drug treatment available and giving law enforcement more tools. Senator Kate Lieber of Beaverton and Representative Rob Nosse of Portland are leading an effort to fix Measure 110 in the legislature.
It really, for me, reinforced the concept that we should be treating addiction as a public health crisis. I think that Portugal does that and does that really well. It also reinforced a few things about some of the flaws that we have in our own ballot measure 110. One of those was, I think Portugal was much more advanced in how much treatment and access to treatment that they had when they decriminalized. And we desperately need to make sure that we continue to build out our treatment systems. I also think that Portugal just has a different legal framework that allows them to confiscate drugs. And we need to kind of figure out how we can, with our own legal framework, confiscate those drugs. I think that is really important. And I'd say one other thing for me, Portugal does a much better job on prevention. And prevention really not just about drugs, but sort of a more holistic look at prevention in their schools. And of course, as you might know, in our joint committee that both Representative Nosse and I serve on, the first people that we heard from were people in the prevention field. So I think that the really reinforced for me the need for us to be lessening the demand of drugs, especially with our youth, through prevention programs.
Given how meth and fentanyl are just such profoundly difficult substances to recover from using from, we're going to have a medical approach. And the good news with a medical approach is our commercial insurance and our Medicaid system will help cover that cost. And then Portugal is also having struggles with housing and affordability of housing, but they seem to have a lot more housing available in spite of their challenges around that. And if we're going to stand up more medical treatment, we've got to have housing that's sort of available for those folks to go to immediately. Even though we have trouble for all kinds of housing in our state for just working people and regular middle-class people, if we have more medical treatment and then we don't have a place for those people to live and be supported in their journey in sobriety, we're sort of wasting our money.
And Senator Lieber, how can the legislature support the expansion of treatment capacity in the state?
Yeah, I mean, we've already started. Certainly, we have in the 21 session, we put in a lot of money towards standing up secure residential treatment beds, and there's more work to do. I think one of the things that has really prevented us from opening up the number of beds that we need has been workforce.
Yes.
So we've had a lot of we've concentrated a lot on figuring out our workforce and making sure that we are paying people appropriately and making sure that they can get the workforce. That still is a struggle. But as we move forward, we have to make sure that we can unlock that piece of it so that we can open up more beds.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, Portugal does not have fentanyl, and fentanyl is a game changer.
Portland Police Association President Sergeant Aaron Schmautz says law enforcement in Portugal does get drug users off the streets, not allowing users to congregate in public areas. Portugal also deploys medical vans stocked with methadone, meeting users where they are. Sergeant Schmautz would like to see public drug use be treated as at least a misdemeanor, but not to throw people in jail.
Police need tools, and they also need to have the authority to intervene, interdict, interact, whatever word you want to use. There's different circumstances. Here, right now, if we want to change behavior, we just don't have the legal authority to do it. If someone's using, we can give them a citation, but we can't change the environment. When people are calling about a person who's very high or causing problems in their neighborhood or is just unable to care for themselves, we can't debate that. We need to have a tool to do that. Now, it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that we're focusing on the problem as it is. It's a health problem. We need treatment in place. We need to have the ability to have people come out to the scene who are treatment people. One thing that I think would be very helpful is having peers available, having treatment people available who the police, when they're out with these folks who are struggling, can say, hey, listen, we could go to jail, but also, look, here's a treatment person. You can go hang out with them and you don't have to go with me. You don't have to physically interact with me. I don't have to take you into custody and take you somewhere. Let's do this instead. That still accomplishes the abatement process without all of the rigmarole of the justice system. So, good options.
As the Oregon legislature looks ahead to the 35-day session in February, those who went on the trip to Portugal say it did give them more insight into what we need to do here.
The Portugal trip reinforced for me the fact that we have got to fix some of the things in Measure 110. And one of those things is making sure that we are giving law enforcement the tools that they need, while at the same time not criminalizing addiction. And so absolutely, we are going to be looking at all those things as we move forward, because what's happening right now in Oregon is unacceptable. We know that.
No taxpayer money was used to fund the trip to Portugal. It was paid for by the Health Justice Recovery Alliance. The alliance was created by backers of Measure 110 after voters passed it in November of 2020. A footnote, Representative Lily Morgan, who you saw in that piece, is leaving the legislature to become city manager of Gold Hill.